Taylor Johnson, welcome to the Uncivilized podcast. It is truly a pleasure to have you, brother. I know we are going to dive into some very, very pertinent topics for men, namely porn, ejaculation, sex, masturbation. Like, this is going to be a light and fluffy podcast. So thanks for joining. For people who don't know you or why I would have you in for such conversation or for such topics, please share with the audience a little bit about you. And then I'd love to hear about the journey that got you here as well.
Yeah, man. Well, first of all, thanks so much for having me here. I love talking about this stuff. And the long and short of it is I'm a guy who used to really suck at sex, not in a good way. Like, I had a horrible sex life years ago. Like, I'm talking premature ejaculation to the point of 10 seconds, 30 seconds on a regular basis.
Okay.
Or not even being able to get an erection because I had erectile dysfunction from watching so much porn. And then I was totally sexually anxious for a while. And I even avoided women for an extended period of time because I was afraid of being the guy that would eventually come too soon or not be able to get hard with them, which is what would happen. And I was a total fucking sexual mess. And at a certain point, I remember I was laying on the floor of my apartment, just staring at the ceiling fan, laying there like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, this sucks. This is not how I want to live. Like, it's affecting my identity as a man. Like, I have to figure this out. I have to know what it's like to have good sex. All these other people saying they had sex for 20 minutes or so, like, they can't be lying, or fuck them, you know? And like, why did I get cursed with this hellacious sex life? You know, so I made a commitment to really figure it out. Fast forward a bunch of years, tons of workshops and retreats and books later, I had a lot of success in my sex life. And then it turned out, hey, I actually love talking about this. And I wish I had somebody when I was younger to talk to me about this in a really down-to-earth, practical way. And so I just started doing that casually with friends. And then I made a really shitty blog. My first blog was called beyondejaculation.com and Instagram. And, you know, it just started rolling and rolling and rolling. And then I started taking trainings on how to actually help people, you know, not just learn the content, but like, here's how you actually provide useful value to people and help them change their lives with whatever you're working with. And that's the long short of it.
First of all, thank you for being willing to talk about this, period. I know it's probably very normal to you, but I imagine the road to get you to comfort had some challenging moments for you, or vulnerable moments for you, or perhaps scary moments for you. So thank you for being willing to talk about it.
Yeah.
And can you speak to the pain? Can you speak to the shame, the anxiety? I don't want people to hear what you just said and go, yeah, that must have been a minor inconvenience to his life. And I bet it was like, you know, having a pimple on the back of his shoulder and he never thought twice about it. And now it's popped and he's into skincare. Can you really speak, I guess, to the men who are struggling with this so that they know that they're heard, and to people who don't think this is a big deal? You just talk a little bit about what it was for you.
Yeah. Well, I'll speak first to the men who might be struggling with this, because to the people who don't think it's a big deal, like, that's whatever, you know, they can have their own reality. And until they interface with this, or an interface with somebody who's actually experiencing this, like, they're not going to change their mind. I'm probably not going to change their mind right now, you know, but I'll just speak for myself. When I was in the depths of this, like, it really impacted my entire life negatively. Like, it impacted how I walked in the world. It impacted how I interacted with people. It impacted my work life, my overall confidence. Like, I just felt down. I felt weak. I felt impotent, you know, energetically impotent. Like, I just felt like I couldn't do stuff. I was lacking zest. And I felt like a lot of shame, honestly. Like, I felt a lot of shame, like, oh, something is broken within me. Like, something must be fundamentally broken. Like, I've watched so much porn that I have permanently damaged my brain. I have permanently damaged my penis. No woman is ever going to like me. Like, I'm a failure, like, all that kind of stuff. And it was heavy. It was like wearing this like heavy, wet blanket that was cold and gray and smelled like shit, you know? And I felt like I had that on my back, even when I was just talking to people in public, you know, because like, they can't, when I was in those moments with them in public, it was like they're not seeing me in that moment watch porn, but all the remnants of everything I had done up until that point was carried with me in some way, in my
Right.
consciousness, in my posture, in my tone of voice. It was just impacted from like, oh, just the day before I like ejaculated twice watching threesome porn,
Yeah.
by myself, hiding it from my girlfriend at the time,
Mm.
like that. So it was a big deal. It
Yeah.
was a really big deal. Yeah.
Did you?
And if, let me just say, like, if you're experiencing this, like any number of these things, like premature ejaculation, sexual anxiety, erectile dysfunction, man, I feel you. It
Mhm.
sucks. Like,
Mhm.
it is not fun. And there's this crazy thing that happens to us guys, which is where we think, oh, I'm the only one that this shit is
Right.
happening to.
There's something
Certainly.
in the male brain, right? Yeah.
Yeah, like certainly everyone else is having the most amazing sex of their life, and yet somehow I got the short end of the stick, and
You're the
everyone's
guy.
gonna laugh at me. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you're not alone. It's like a very large percentage of people actually struggle with this stuff, and I think the
Yeah.
percentage is higher than people say it is because we don't talk about it.
Of course. Yeah, I appreciate you saying that. And I'm curious, what was it like to try to be in relation? Like, did you not want to be in relationship? Were you really conflicted if you met a woman that you were interested in pursuing relationship with? I know we'll get into the fact that you were in relationship later.
Yeah.
But as this was like, what was it like to walk around? Did you feel like you had a secret? Do you feel
Mm.
like you just didn't want to be exposed? Talk to me a little bit about that, if you would.
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't think I've ever been asked that question. I've been on a lot of podcasts. Let's see. I would say the biggest, so there's like two main phases of my life that I'm thinking of, and the biggest secret element of it all was my porn habit, and I would call it porn addiction. And just
Mhm.
like of course, I didn't broadcast that to anybody. Didn't go to the party and say, "Hey, man, I've watched porn the last 5 days. Whew, let me tell you about what it did to my consciousness." No, not at all. Like I would hide that. I would keep that in. And I was living with my girlfriend at the time years ago and would hide it from her. She had no
Mm.
idea, or at least I don't
Mm.
think she had any idea. Like when she would be off at work or out with her friends or something, I'd just like get distracted and hooked. It felt like getting hooked by something and pulled into it. That was like the addictive response.
Yeah.
And it did feel like this dark secret. I didn't want to tell anybody. Like, I don't think I did tell anybody actually
Mm.
during that time. It was a while later before I really learned how important it is to talk to other people about this kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And let me preface this also, like there was another time where I was really, struggling with premature ejaculation and erectile dysfunction and all that, where the secret was so deep that I just completely avoided the secret by not even talking to women,
Mhm.
that I was attracted to at all. I would just ignore them, and
Mhm.
I would just play sports or work out or I don't know, hang out with my guys friends or ride bikes or whatever, like
Yeah.
do anything else other than talk to attractive women. And if people ask me like, Taylor, are you dating somebody? Like, what's going on? No, I'm not. I'm just not like feeling that right now. You know?
Yeah. Oh man, the secret aspect of it is it's insane. I remember in my it was like mid-20s, once like losing an erection in the middle of sex with a girlfriend who I was with for like 4 or 5 years.
Yeah.
And I remember the next day walking the streets of New York thinking like that guy knows. They know. He knows. They're looking at me. They must have known. Everybody knows. Everybody
Yeah.
fucking knows.
Yeah.
Right. And wanting to hide and wanting to not engage in the world. And then I also will say with porn, I think one of the biggest challenges of porn, Taylor, is like there is no smell, there's no hangover, there's no like, oh, look at him, he fumbled driving. Like these things don't happen.
Yeah.
But I will also agree with you that there's an energetic sense that is undeniable. And having worked with a number of men with porn addictions and having to navigate my own challenges with porn, remember feeling like, oh, this is on me still. Like looking at porn for a couple hours, going out in the world, I mean, like I feel like there's an energetic charge around me. If you can go back to your relationship, I mean, I don't know if you have this relationship with her. If this was one of those this like gotcha podcast, I'd be like, and we have her here on the phone, Susan.
Yeah.
I'd be really curious of her experience of you in that time, if she actually could feel it. Did you guys ever have a conversation around that? Like,
Yeah. That's a really good question. Um, we had conversations around a variety of things,
Hmm.
around that one particular aspect. I'm not sure. And I think it would be interesting to do so actually. So how about this? Like I'll take it as a growth edge challenge from you to initiate that or see if she would even be open to that conversation. This is a long time ago,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
but I
yeah.
think it might be interesting and it might actually be relieving on some level
Yeah.
for her.
That's very brave of you, man. I'm gonna ask the like street level. I'm a new guy to the podcast.
Yeah.
Why are you watching that much porn if you're in a relationship with a woman? And I'm not trying to
Yeah.
put you down or shame you.
Yeah.
Or
Yeah.
I
No, for
just
sure.
want to, because a lot of people can't connect the two. Of like, wait a minute, but you had did the real thing in the house.
Mm-hmm.
What was going on with you? And I also want to ask you. My brain works fast in these.
Yeah. Yeah. Do it.
Was there something in your past that led you to porn before relationship, or was it just
Mm.
like, hey, I'm the dude who started looking at Playboy, and then wow, there was internet porn, and like so many millions of men, it
Yeah.
just was too strong to overcome,
Mm.
right? Like I didn't see internet porn. I remember being in college, Taylor. I'll date myself, and my college roommate was an IT guy. Like that's what he was studying, and I remember staring at his computer as line by line
Pixel. Yeah.
this picture filled in, and we were like, I think that's it. It's like
Yeah.
cliche, like
Come
I
on,
think that's
nipple.
a
Come on,
nipple.
nipple. Where's
Come
the
on,
nipple?
nipple, right? And
Yeah.
had I been 11 and had that shit on my phone, I don't know where I'd be in the world right now. Right.
Yeah.
So one, what was going on with you relationally, and was there something in your past that sort of led you to this?
Gosh, I mean, there's probably always something in our past that led us to something.
For sure, for sure.
Gosh, what would I say? I mean, hmm, I don't want to pathologize when guys look at porn. Like,
Sure.
I don't want to say like, oh, there's something wrong with you if you're looking at porn because I don't actually think that that's the case. I
Mm-hmm.
think it's true that I like to call porn cocaine for the penis, right? It's like cocaine for your
Mm-hmm.
sexual response system. Like if you try cocaine and you don't have any other problems in your life, like it's still possible that you're going to get hooked by cocaine.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't mean that something's fundamentally wrong with you. Like it's an addictive substance.
Yeah.
Porn is inherently designed to be as addictive as possible, especially all the high speed internet, like free, endless, infinite millions of videos that are out there,
Yeah.
So for me, I think it was really just like, oh, I got a taste of it and I wanted more and I got a
Okay.
taste of it and I wanted more. And probably there was some other stuff going on too if I were to like deeply analyze it. But it's just you could see anything you want to. And
Mm-hmm.
there's a part that I think most people don't recognize or think about with porn. It's the fact that it's easy. You don't
Mm,
have to do the work of navigating feelings. You don't have to do
right.
the work of navigating perhaps mismatched needs and desires. You can just go on and get exactly what you want
Yeah.
without any labor at all. And there's, when somebody's doing that, it's meeting a lot of needs of that person of ease, relaxation, getting stimulation, like those are human needs.
For sure.
It's just not maybe the best strategy to do so, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah. I've tried to come up with an analogy around food of like if you watched a cooking show and then you were 80% full or 60% full. And so the next morning when you were hungry, you could be like, oh, I could go cook, but then I have to go to Whole Foods and buy ingredients and they may not have them. So I can just watch the show again and I'll be 60% full.
Yeah.
Like I don't have a quite because I know there's a misunderstanding a lot from women who say like, but why this makes no sense to me. You
Mm-hmm.
could have had sex with your girlfriend, you could have had the real thing, and not understanding all that goes into the risk, the conversation, the insecurities, the what if I can't, what if I don't, what if it doesn't work, what if this person's unavailable, what about my own sense of self, like all of the things that are behind the scenes. Would you mind speaking, if you know them, like some of the parts for yourself that made sex more intimidating or made porn more appealing? Are you open to sharing that?
Yeah. Let me think about that. Man, these are great questions.
Thank you.
Um, I don't think it was the case that sex was less appealing to me. Like when I think back to that,
Mm.
I mean, it definitely was the case that because I eventually did start to experiment with watching less porn, and I noticed the frequency and the quality of our sexual connections did improve, but I'd never really lost interest in sex. I still
Okay.
was interested in sex and wanted sex. I think one of the things that was tricky for me was how to express my actual desires for things that I wanted to try in sex.
Okay.
That felt very challenging for me.
Yep.
Like,
I
oh,
get
I
that.
want to like fuck her doggy style.
Right.
Well, I don't want to be the dirty man.
Look at you,
I
toxic
don't want to be like this.
masculinity.
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Like, I don't want to be that guy. Oh, I think I'd like to try anal sex with her. Oh,
Right.
I can't bring that up because then she's going to think I'm dirty, or like all of
Yep.
those like concerned thoughts. So it's easy. Oh, well, I could just watch anal sex on porn,
Yep.
or I could just watch a domination scene there. I don't have to own my desires, because that was like, oh, that's
Mm-hmm.
scary. At
Mm-hmm.
least in that phase of my life. Now I've gone on a big journey now, and now I like owning desires, and I think it's sexy and hot, and
Yeah.
of course people do too. But that's a
Yeah.
big jump,
Yeah.
and that's not like a switch you can just turn on. That takes practice.
Right. Right.
So yeah, I'll pause there. Yeah,
Yeah. That's so important. So important. I remember even being at a men's workshop, and I think it was Stefanos. You
yeah.
know him, Steph, and he said like, this was confronting as hell for a lot of guys, but I'd already been through. I was there teaching, and he's like, you're going to tell the other men what you want in your sex life that you're not getting, and then that guy is going to try to replicate it without sex. So it's like, I want rougher sex. That guy's going to like wrestle with you. I want more tender sex. That guy is going to like, stroke your hand or something. And watching the guys just go blank or start to stutter or be like, I just can't say it. And none of this stuff was that crazy, but the block from cock to heart to voice was so intense. And I remember Steph saying, like, if you can't say it in a workshop to a dude who's not going to even do it, it's going to be very challenging for you to go home and tell your wife, who may then go, well, fuck you, I'm out of here. Or at least that's the fear, right? Like, or fuck you, there's something wrong with you for wanting that. I think that's a big challenge for guys. Taylor, talk to me now. Let's turn the corner. Let's get to, okay, we've figured out that this has been a challenge. What was day one, step one? Or what was the moment you realized? Let's start with the moment of like, wait a minute, something's amiss and maybe I'm not broken. Can you tell me about that day?
Well, I can definitely remember the day when I made a decision to change things. I don't remember if there was a turning point where I had the first thought of maybe I'm not broken. Like, it happened somewhere along the journey, for sure. But day one, step one for me was like, I'm going to watch less porn. I'm just going to try, see what happens if I watch less porn. And instead of every day, it's like every other day or every third day. I slowly would taper it down. And I would notice that when I would go for 3 or 4 days without watching porn, like I started to feel better. And I was also like, I decided, I'm going to work out more during this time.
Okay.
I'm going to try to do more fun stuff too in my life, because I feel like I need more fun stuff. That was my thought process at the time.
Yeah.
I didn't have a guide, but I was like, it would make sense to do positive things in addition to cutting out bad things. So I started, right? Yeah.
This is like baby enlightenment. Yeah.
Yeah. So I started to play around with that, and I realized, wow, like this is pretty cool. Like, I feel less irritable. I feel more stable, and I feel just better about myself. Well, then I would watch porn again, and and it would just cycle for a while. I was in this period of porn, no porn, porn, no porn. And eventually it reached a point where I realized, wow, this is like, life is actually better, like overall, without as much porn. My relationship is better. My friendships are better. My overall feeling of being alive is better. And then through that process, I was reading a bunch of, like, any book I could get my hands on. So a lot of guys who are in this space are probably familiar with The Way of the Superior Man. Also Montauk Chia's book, The Multi-Orgasmic Man, which, by the way, I thought was a complete joke and bullshit book until it started happening for me. And I was like, oh my God, this is actually real,
Right on.
But I was reading some of those books too. And a common theme in a lot of those books was, hey, bro, like, maybe don't ejaculate so much. See what your life is like.
Mm-hmm.
And for me at that time, I had nothing to lose. I was not happy with my sex life. And I thought, well, this sounds like a bunch of shit, but whatever. These guys are
Right.
writing books about it. I'm
Yeah.
going to try it. I'm going to see what happens. So I reduced the amount of ejaculations per week, from every day to like every other day, again, kind of like porn. And I went through this whole self-experimentation process, and I started to notice, go figure, if I went 3 or 4 days without ejaculating to porn or just even ejaculating in masturbation, I started to feel a little bit more energized, and I started to feel a little bit more motivated. And I thought, wow, this is interesting. Like, what's the next step? Well, they said, it's actually a really good step to try someday in your life. Try having sex that doesn't end in ejaculation, because that can be a big doorway to all kinds of other stuff, like the non-ejaculatory orgasm, which I didn't believe existed at the time, and non-goal oriented sex. And I thought, okay, someday I'm going to try this. And I remember that day came, and I had sex with my partner, and I was doing practices, because you have to do practices internally and physically in your body if you're going to do that. Otherwise you'll get blue balls. But I was doing different breath practices and circulation and self massage on the pelvic floor and all that stuff. And I did not ejaculate intentionally. And I did what we can just call circulating the arousal through my body. And I remember going to the grocery store after that and just going to pick stuff up. And I was just like sitting in my car driving there, like, whoa, I feel fucking strong. And I got into the grocery store, and I remember feeling like I had gotten the gold star in Super Mario Brothers, something like that. I was just like, whoa, holy shit. This is why people write books about this stuff. This is why this has been passed down for generations in some esoteric traditions. It's because this shit's powerful. It's like really powerful. I mean, it was one step of power for me to just stop watching porn, then another to stop ejaculating all the time, but then another to intentionally build sexual energy, arousal, and let it simmer and marinate in my system instead of releasing it and then go about my day.
Yeah.
That was fucking incredible. And if you're listening to this, just want to be very clear at this point, because a lot of guys will be like, oh, he hates ejaculation. Fuck him. I'm not listening anymore. It's not true. I think ejaculatory orgasms are great. I can help you have better ones. And I like helping guys figure out how to not feel depleted after them too. Like there's some very useful techniques for all that kind of stuff. So just to be very clear, I still think ejaculations are a very healthy and important part of being a sexual man. I just don't do them all the time by default. And I found that produces, for me, much more vitality, much happier everything.
I'm really glad you brought that up, because I was going to name this podcast like I Hate Ejaculations with Taylor Johnson. But we'll find something else to call it.
Great.
Taylor, how do you navigate that conversation? Because I remember having this conversation with guys. I remember the first time I heard it. I had a roommate when I was living in Guatemala who was like, you should be ejaculating no more than 2 or 3 times a year. And I was like, I'm sorry, I literally don't know what you just fucking said. Like, totally. Did you mean day or did you mean week? And I have a Chinese medical background, which is saying like, don't ejaculate a lot. That's Jing. That's really important stuff. So when you hear this from a layperson, how do you navigate the conversation so that they don't just tune out and go like, whatever, bro, like this is the dumbest thing ever. Why would you even have sex if you can't ejaculate? How do you navigate that early stage person?
Yeah, well, I thought of another title for the podcast, something like the non-ejaculation evangelist or something. Well, yeah. So to be really clear, like I'm not going around trying to convince every guy I meet to stop ejaculating.
Yeah.
Right? Like I try to help guys who want help with their sex life. Like that's what I do for my work and for my passion. And so my first question is, are you happy? Like, are you truly satisfied with your sex life? If you are, great. I'm stoked for you. Good on you. Like keep doing what you're doing. If you're not, let's examine some things. Let's talk about maybe porn. Let's talk about your relationship. Let's talk about your feelings. Whoa. Like I know that's a big thing. It's still a big thing for me that, by the way, I'm still regularly working on. Let's talk about ejaculation, like all that kind of stuff, and if they are ejaculating multiple times a day or every day, then we have a conversation about it. And I'm just like, hey, some people say this thing. I found it to be the case that you might consider trying it, since you're saying you want to shift your sex life. But if you're happy, great.
How did this experiment change your relationship? And did you tell her
Hmm.
Like, was there a moment where you were like, hey, by the way, I've gone from looking at porn every day to looking at it 3 times a week? Or how did you keep this relational, or did you?
Yeah, it's a great question. Well, for a period of time, it made our relationship better,
Okay.
and it made our sex better, it made our connection better. And interestingly, I think it was also the thing that led to the end of our relationship,
Huh. How so?
because it's interesting, right? This is a little bit of a head twist,
Yeah.
but it's because when I was ejaculating every day to porn and I was really in that sort of like sexually depleted place, I did not feel as full of like, not as full of myself, but I didn't feel like my true, authentic, powerful self, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And when I started to do these practices, I started to
Mm-hmm.
regain a sense of autonomy and power and sovereignty in my world and not be
Mm-hmm.
so mergy in the relationship. And I started to realize like, I actually I actually don't think this is the right relationship. You know, like the
Wow.
measure, like the measure of success here should not be longevity. The measure of success should be, are we actually supporting each other in the ways that we each want to be living right now? And the answer to that ultimately came to be no, you know.
Wow.
But for a period of time, it did improve sex and connection. And then I was
Sure.
like, actually, I want to go a different direction.
Yeah. Good for you for doing that. Yeah. I don't want to go on a tangent here, but good for you for doing that. You're a man in his full power will be in relationship by choice. A man not in his full power will not be in relationship by choice. I don't think either partner will be in relationship
Yeah.
by choice. So good on you.
Yeah. And I just want to be transparent too. I would like to say that I fully learned my lesson at that point in life with that dynamic. I did not. You know, we have to learn lessons multiple times sometimes,
Yeah,
but that's
I'm with you.
just what being human is, you know.
Yeah.
It's part of the journey. Yeah.
What was then? It sounds like so you started doing these practices on your own. Talk to
Mm.
me a little bit about your more quote formal education
Mm.
of who were you studying with? What were the next levels? Did you have a innate belief or innate curiosity of like, oh, if I can get to a 5 with just doing it on my own, what would an
Mm.
8 look like? What would a 10 look like? Will you walk us through a little bit of that journey?
Yeah. So still there is no formal educational path with this kind of thing. I looked, at
Okay.
least when I was starting, I looked and I thought, man, I'd love to go get a master's degree in this stuff. You know,
In
can
ejaculation.
I get
Yeah.
like male sexual optimization? Like certainly, but no,
Oh.
there's definitely was not out there, you know?
Mm.
And so for a number of years, I kind of just created my own master's degree. I'm just going to call it that. Like
Yeah.
I went to every workshop I could find, you know. I live in Asheville, North Carolina. There's a guy here who teaches from Montauk Chia's
Mm.
tradition, a lot of Taoist practices. I studied with him a bunch. I studied with various people who taught all different types of branches of tantra. Like
Mm.
it's a long list of people, you know. I studied practical Western sex and just all kinds of stuff. Like there's a event called Sex Down South down in Atlanta, Georgia that I've gone to before that I learned a lot of really interesting practical stuff there. And it just kind of hodgepodged a lot of different things.
Yeah.
And interestingly, one of the most helpful things to me when I think about it was like all that stuff is great. And then I also took about, I don't know, like a year and a half of communication classes, like
Mm.
how to actually talk about this stuff. Like,
Mhm.
and that was a big block for me. In Asheville, there's a guy named Steve Torma who years ago originally started a school with a partner of his, business partner, for how to have better sex, right? It's
Mm.
basically a school about how to have better sex. That went on for a little bit and they realized, well, turns out most people know how to like put their penis inside something, you
Yeah.
know, or like the challenge is actually how do you talk about it? And how do you navigate all the interpersonal things that come up too,
Yeah.
you know? And this is one of the reasons sex is so interesting to me, because it's not just about, oh, squeeze, do a Kegel and you'll be
Right.
fine. It's like,
Right.
sure, learn how to do that, but then also learn how this shame that you've been holding since you were 12
Mm.
years old because you got picked on in the locker room is impacting your ability to enjoy pleasure when your girlfriend is giving you a blowjob now at 23,
Yeah.
you know, or 43.
Yeah.
It's like that kind of shit will stay with you. And if you can uncover that, if you can go digging and find those little nuggets that you can release and turn into
Yeah.
gold, like that is fucking amazing, you
Yeah,
know?
man. I think most guys, and I was probably guilty of this myself at some point, think like my dick is a separate entity that like lives at a spa and just gets taken care of and then flown in for the big game,
Yeah.
as opposed to like, oh, my health affects it, oh, my past affects it, oh,
Yeah.
my everything in my life can affect my sex life, and my sex life can thus affect everything else.
Yeah. Let me share a story on
Yeah,
that
yeah.
too, because it's funny. It's funny to me now, but it's something that actually like it impacted me for a
Mm,
while. So 5 years old, of course, and kindergarten. It's show and tell. People are bringing teacher said, bring your trucks, bring your crystals, bring your whatever. And everyone's there excited to share their things. It's going around the circle. Like Tommy brought it, whatever. It came to my turn and I was like, ooh, this is going to be great. I'm so excited. And I stood up and I pulled down my pants and I was like, I brought my penis. I shit you not. And
you win the podcast for the year. I give one, but now we have a new podcast award.
yeah, yeah, I did.
How was
And
that
I was,
received?
well, the kids loved it, you
Yeah.
know? All the other kids, they were just like, wow. And there was like a mixture of big, giant smiles and laughter. And it was all really positive, honestly. Because I mean, we're kids
Yeah.
at that age, just like, wow, cool. Like,
Yeah.
maybe I
Yeah.
have one of those. Or, oh,
Yeah.
that's what that looks like. But so then it's like, dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
The teacher was just like
Mm,
shrieking at me, like, Taylor,
mm,
no, that's bad. Put that away.
mm,
Like
mm.
so intense. And I remember in that moment, I was just like, oh, like it was actually innocent excitement for me at that
Sure.
time, like authentically. And I was like, oh, my penis is bad.
Yep.
Was what I internalized from that.
Yep. Yep.
And
Yep.
it didn't seem, of course, I wouldn't have the awareness to know that it was a big deal at that time,
Sure.
but that actually really impacted me. And
Yeah.
so then when I made the example earlier of, oh, if something happens to you earlier in life and then
Mhm.
for some reason you can't enjoy a blowjob,
Right.
like that's what happened to me.
Right.
Like
Right. Right. Right.
there were a number of years when I came into my sexual life where, oh, getting a blowjob was hard. Like
Mm,
not like penis hard, but like
mhm.
challenging for
Challenging.
me
Yeah.
because at first I didn't even want them to see my penis because
Right.
A, I went through all this struggle with premature ejaculation and stuff, but then B, because there's something fundamentally bad or wrong about my penis, I shouldn't show it to people. And that
Right.
was not
Right.
a conscious thought that I had, but
Right.
it lived in my body.
Mm,
That belief lived somewhere in my body. And I remember I was at, we'll call it some form of a de-armoring ritual, which
mhm.
is something in a sexual workshop that I went to where the idea is to just get rid of some of the stuff that's holding you back that you might not be aware of. I was in the process with that. And I like flashed back to this scene of my teacher yelling at me when my penis was out in front of my friends. And I was like, oh my God. And I would just like immediately
Yep.
connected all these dots. I mean, it was borderline psychedelic experience. I was totally sober, but it
Mm,
had that same sort of impact. And I saw this thread that ran through and I just like cried and I cried and I like
mm,
released and I was like, oh my God. And then I got pissed and I just like
mhm,
smashed some shit like pillows, it was part of
mhm,
the ritual experience. And I was able to feel that anger and like let it out.
mm.
And then, man, let me tell you, like blowjobs got a lot better after that, you know, because I was able to release this deeply internalized shame around my genitals. I
Yeah.
was like, oh, actually, my penis is amazing. Like,
Yeah.
actually, it like for somebody who wants it, like it's a gift to share that with them,
For
you
sure.
know,
Yeah. I have a
truthfully.
chapter in, or first of all, thank you for sharing that story.
Yeah.
I think every man has some point in their boyhood when their penis or sexuality was shamed. And then some people have very traumatic experiences.
For sure.
But even something as quote innocent as that will lead to a lot of shame, which we do carry. We carry a ton of it. Shoot, I lost my train of thought there. Uh,
Bringing the penis to show and tell.
yeah, bringing the penis to show and tell. But think of it. I mean, for you
Yeah.
guys listening to this, if being viewed evokes that level of shame, and how many of us were told to cover up or like hide an erection, or an erection was shameful. There's so much in there, Taylor. I'm with you.
Yeah.
Like it is one of the most loaded, charged concepts. sexuality is, and one of the most freeing then when you do that work. And it doesn't just affect your sex life. I hope that
For
comes
sure.
across more so than anything else in this conversation,
Yeah.
that the shame and guilt and hiding or shadow that you carry your sex life in, it does bleed into every area of other area of your life.
Yeah.
Taylor, when did you decide to go from high level amateur to turning the corner to pro and starting to work with guys around this?
Yeah. Well, that's a great question. If you will hold that question for a
Sure,
second,
sure.
I just want to speak to the money piece because
Yeah, yeah.
that's a part of the story I left out actually. That is really important. And so back during this time, in my previous career, I was a professional photographer and filmmaker in the business
Mm.
world. And
Mm-hmm.
during the beginning of that career was when I was like really in this this sexual mess
Mm.
before I was fully established. And throughout the process of experimenting with not watching as much porn and experimenting with not ejaculating less and learning the art of sexual transmutation, which by the way, if you don't know that term, it basically means turning sexual desire into fuel for something that could be more useful. So for me,
Mm.
the example is, oh, I had a desire to watch porn and ejaculate. Well, that originates as some kind of stimulation in my body, some sort of sensation that I can feel. It's like a pull to that thing. All right, well, if I take a moment and breathe with that, I can integrate that and then use that as motivation to go do something else. Right.
Mm.
So learning that skill set, I started to feel more motivation and more on fire. And when I was negotiating contracts with companies, like I started to feel more confident asking for more money. And I started to have more motivation to update my website and be creative with marketing materials. And it just started this snowball effect and snowball effect. And my actual skill set got better too, because I was devoting my life energy to this passion and project. And I started
Mm.
making more money and more money, getting bigger clients and bigger clients. And I worked for some of the biggest companies that are out there, and it was
Yeah.
awesome, you know. And
Yeah,
so
man.
that for me was a direct experience, a direct result of being intentional with my sexual choices, you
Yeah.
know.
I appreciate you bringing that part in.
Yeah.
It is just so it's like it's gold. Like you have access to this I don't even high charge energy that I remember the first time, I think it was maybe Way of the Superior Man or listening to a teacher saying like, don't blow that into a tissue. Like keep that
Yeah.
and let it fuel you into something bigger and greater. And yeah, I really appreciate you bringing that forward, because so much of the work of Uncivilized period is having men have a healthy relationship with power. And so
Mm.
you have the most powerful energy in the world. That's what keeps us procreating and keeping the species going. And we have no relationship to it. Period. It dominates us. It overtakes us,
Yeah.
or we have to so cut ourselves off from it that it comes out sideways. So you guys listening to this, I hope what he just said really, really lands with you. If you can take this energy and turn it into making more money, or having better relationships, or studying a subject, or doing creative projects, or et cetera, et cetera. So
Yeah.
I appreciate you bringing that forward.
For
When did you
sure.
go pro?
When did I go pro? when at what time did I go pro? I officially did that in, like, I started doing that full time in 2019.
Okay.
And it was a journey up until that point, but that's when I was like, all right, I'm going full in.
Mm.
Was that year. And it was, you seem like you're about to say something.
Yeah, yeah. I was going to ask, if you don't mind. Maybe I'm jumping ahead of you.
Mm.
What are some of the questions you ask? So or actually, yeah. Let's jump to that. I'm trying to put myself in the listener's position of saying, okay, first of all, this is going to be embarrassing to call this guy because, well, one, I now know him, but it doesn't matter even if it's somebody else. I'm like, I now have to talk about this stuff. What are some of the hurdles you have to go through with clients, and how do you even start that process with them?
Yeah. I mean, it's a great question, you know? So do I put this in business terms? Well, we'll say warm leads if anyone's familiar with that. Like one of my intentions, and even with this podcast, like
Yeah.
one of my intentions with this and some of the content that I create is to put out into the world messages of authenticity and positivity around male sexuality, and male
Mhm.
sexual health and optimization. And if there's a guy listening or watching one of my many YouTube videos who thinks, oh, I resonate with that, I'd love to get some support with that, or at least have a conversation about that, then they'll reach out.
Mm.
Again, I'm not going up putting flyers around downtown like, here's how to improve your sex life, and I'm not like cold calling people or knocking on people's doors like, let me help you with your sex life. It seems like a more effective way to have people
Yeah.
come to me,
Yeah.
and then we just have an open conversation, and I just ask them some
Mm.
really down to earth questions. And what I've found is that like most people actually want to be able to talk about their sex life.
Yeah.
And I found this even with people they're not coming to me for advice, and I love it. Like I've flown a lot for going to different workshops or teaching different things. And I get so entertained in the moment when people ask me like, oh, what do you do?
Yeah.
And I'm like, we're going to be next to each other for 5 hours. I'm about to tell you what I do. You're going to have some thoughts and feelings about this, you know,
What is your
but
answer?
well, my answer is like what I mean, I vary it depending on the level of intensity I think a person can handle, because
Sure.
there's usefulness in intentionality. But I always
Sure.
tell some version of the truth, which is like, hey, I'm actually a sexologist and a male sex coach, and I help men
Mm.
work through whatever's holding them back in their
Mm.
sexuality or their sex lives so they can have better sex and relationships. And
Right.
usually people are like, woo, sex, haha,
Yeah.
like they do some shit like that. And then
Right.
a couple minutes later, they kind of circle back around and they're like, hey, by the way, so
Mm.
this thing is happening in my life. What do you think about it?
Mm.
Like 9 times out of 10, that's
Yeah.
what happens. And I've had conversations with people about their sex lives that I would never have imagined would openly talk about it, but it's
Sure.
because they just were given permission,
Yeah.
and that's been really cool. That's been a
Yeah.
really cool part of it.
I want to ask you a societal question.
Hit me. Yeah.
I think a lot of the societal messaging, and true or untrue, is that sex for women with men is not often as pleasurable as it could be.
Okay.
That's not a leap of a message to make.
Yeah.
Like, hey, I wish men were more interested in my pleasure. I wish men, et cetera, et cetera. Yet, I feel like there's this massive resistance if a man were to say, like, hey, I'm going this weekend to a Get Better at Sex workshop. 8 out of 10 people would probably shame him or laugh at him or put him down or be like, why do you need that? Why aren't you just already amazing? And so, given those two, the dichotomy of a lot of people would benefit if men got better at sex, and yet we're going to shit on the guy who tries. Why do you think we're stuck in that disconnect there?
Yeah. Societal shame, problematic puritanical beliefs about sex, like that could be a very long list of reasons why,
Mm-hmm.
and I think if those two people were to have a down to earth conversation about it, they would actually end up agreeing, on like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, that actually seems like a smart thing to do. And I would imagine, at least for women, probably one of the biggest things that comes up for them in that context is a fear that the man is going to a sex workshop to learn how to get better techniques or to
Mm-hmm.
thrust better and somehow not be taught the art of attunement,
Right.
or how to actually experience connection with a woman, because that's one of the biggest pain points is they don't feel like men are actually connecting with them. They don't feel
Right.
like the men are attuned to them. They feel like the men are just using them as a human masturbation sleeve or to
Yeah.
get off or something
Yeah.
like that, so I could totally understand why that reaction might come up in that context.
Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah. And I think
Taylor,
for guys,
go ahead. Go ahead.
like for guys, like there's just so much embedded ego and shame in sex. It's like we're all expected to be good at sex, or we all think we expect we should be good at sex without
Right.
any training, but it doesn't work like that for any skill. You want to
Right.
learn the guitar, you want to learn jujitsu, you want to learn drumming. It's like you would never in your wildest dreams think you would be skilled after like 2 weeks of practice with something,
Right.
and you would
Let
always go
alone if
learn
that
from
was
somebody.
the most deeply vulnerable, intimate, you know, concept that or way of relating that actually exists between people,
For
which
sure.
makes it even more charged.
Yeah.
Tell me about the after effect of your work And I'm giving you an opportunity. Like, I don't want you to talk, obviously outing any of your clients, but
Yeah.
like, what do you see in the men who have worked with you for a bit? Like, what changes about their lives?
Yeah. It's a great question. I mean, I could list off some of the bullet point items, of course,
Mm-hmm.
but I think for the men I work with who are really committed and do the work, like the biggest thing I see afterwards is this feeling of freedom. But not this freedom of sort of like, woo, I'm free, kind of floating around, but this sort of this directed freedom of like, oh, I feel fucking awesome in my life. I feel like I can get what I want. I feel like I can do what I want. And now that's showing up in my posture when I walk around, like that's showing up in just nonverbal confidence. And there is this like,
Yeah.
to them. That's awesome. It's like an unspoken thing. Like if they were to walk into a room afterwards and before, like you could tell the difference in just how they're holding themselves, and they wouldn't have to say anything about it.
Yeah.
That's what I
I
would say.
appreciate that. How I don't want to make this too quantified.
Yeah.
Like, I'm a man, I'm listening to you, I'm interested in this. Is this a 7-year process? Is this a 2-month process? Like, talk me through a little bit of like, I'm a jujitsu guy. Like, when do I get my blue belt? When do I get my purple belt? When am I when am I an expert here?
You will get you like way faster than you could get any belts in jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
Because that's a long process, at least so
Yeah.
I've been told.
Without the torn ACLs as well, hopefully. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, look, it's going to depend on your access point and like, why is a guy coming to do this work? I mean, this work, quote unquote, could mean a lot of different things. Like maybe a guy has premature ejaculation, or he's struggling with ED, or he feels really sexually anxious, or maybe he just can't own his desires with his partner. Like each one of those access points is going to have a different timeline. But what I would say for people who are struggling with, we'll just call it the dysfunction category, which, side note, if you're ejaculating early, that means you're actually biologically functioning perfectly, because it wouldn't make sense for you to last 20 minutes to impregnate somebody to perpetuate the species. Like the faster you can do it, like great. So your system's working well.
Yeah.
But what I would say to those guys is, hey, you've got, how old are you? 25, 35, 45, whatever that is. A decade, 2 decades, 3 decades of inertia and patterns that you've built up here. Like this is going to take a little time to start to see some shifts. And by a little time, I mean, at least you're going to need 6 weeks of consistent effort before you see something that's like really giving you the feeling of, oh, this has some consistency of it. Like you'll probably get some blips, moments here and there of, oh, I got this. And then you'll fall back, and I got this and I'll fall back. But yeah, like a good solid 6 weeks. And I remember like the first time I really did a deep dive into committing to not watching porn and not fantasizing, to sort of rewire myself. Like it was a solid 3 weeks ish before I could even get an erection again.
Oh yeah.
And like during that time, I went through a whole second process of, oh man, I'm broken.
Yeah.
I have destroyed my brain. I have destroyed my penis. Like I am fucked for life. Like, luckily at that point I was studying with somebody who said like, Taylor, like this is normal. Just like keep going, stay with it, and just stay with your breath and your body. Eventually your erection will come back, and eventually it'll feel stronger than it was before. And very thankful that person was there. And it's true. It happened, but that was a leap of faith. I didn't know what was on the other side of that bridge. That was scary. Like many times I thought I should just go back to porn to make sure I could get an erection, but I didn't. Yeah.
That must've been a glorious erection. If we can just sort of end the note. Were you like, thank you, baby Jesus. Thank you so much.
That's awesome.
Oh man, Taylor, for people who are interested in working with you, finding your material, engaging with you further, where's the best place we can send them?
Yeah, you can just search me on Google, Taylor Johnson Sex Coach. I have a podcast too, which I'm excited to interview you on in a few weeks. It's called the Sex Upgraded Podcast, and I'd say most of my stuff is either on my podcast or on my YouTube channel.
Okay, so, and what's your YouTube channel?
Taylor Clark Johnson, at Taylor Clark Johnson. Yeah. Taylor,
awesome, man.
If you search Taylor Johnson Sex Coach on YouTube, if I don't pop up, I will be astonished.
Beautiful. Yeah. Thanks for coming in, man. I appreciate your time. And I have to say, as someone who works with men and works with women and know the effects of both of the distortions around sex that happen to both men and women. I really appreciate what you're doing and
Yeah.
see a value in it that's far deeper than just cool, let's have better sex as a culture, but really let's stop a lot of the awfulness that's happening and let's engage in a lot of the truth of what sex should be. So man to man,
Yeah.
thank you, brother. I appreciate you.
Totally. Yeah. And let me just say here at the end too, if you're if you're a guy and you're watching or listening to this and you are struggling with some of these things, I really want you to know that it's possible to change, and you don't have to work with me to do that. Like you could work with somebody else or even just talking with somebody else, but just know that it is possible. Like I'm living proof. I've
Yeah,
worked with many hundreds of guys now and have seen this transition happen for guys. And like, I promise you it's possible if you put in the work. And yeah, like it is going to help you have better sex and it will positively impact all the other people in your life too. So thank you
awesome,
for
man.
even listening to this episode and thanks for having me on, Trevor.
My
I
pleasure.
appreciate the opportunity.
Cheers, man. Thank you.